September 1940. Congress passes the Selective Service and Training Act.
The first number is serial number 158.
It promises that black Americans will be represented in the armed forces in proportion to the general population.
The FC, the CPL, the SGT, the LT, CP, the OD, the MP makes you do can't be. It's a G.I. jive, man.
But the Marine Corps isn't accepting blacks. The Army Air Corps isn't accepting blacks. The Navy is, but only as mess attendants. The Army takes African Americans, but only as replacements for its all-black units.
Monday morning, the first thing I did, go down to the Army recruiting station to enlist in the service of my country. I was told there was no quota for black troops.
You've got to remember that this country was very discriminatory, segregated, and there was no change. First of all, black sailors, as sailors per se, other than as mess attendants or stewards, weren't permitted into the Navy.
Well, given the fact that I was in the segregated Army, that made no difference. I joined the Army to fight for the country, for my country, because I was born and raised and nurtured by this country. And I saw no reason to slack off because of being segregated or being in a racist society.
The V for victory becomes the double V for black Americans. Victory over fascism, victory over racism at home. The double V becomes a rallying cry for African American participation in America's armed forces and on the home front. African American women also answered the call to service. From Europe to North Africa to New Guinea and here at home, they serve and work to win the war. In April 1941, the Army Nurse Corps has 48 African American nurses. By 1944, there will be 220 black Army nurses. African American females in the Women's Army Corps, or WACs, also have an uphill battle to serve their country. Spring 1944. Allied forces gather in England for the largest amphibious invasion in history. African American troops are part of the operations that will liberate Europe. Quartermaster units rush troops to the docks and load precious supplies. Their support is critical to the pending invasion. At Omaha Beach, black soldiers of the 320th Anti-Aircraft Balloon Battalion release barrage balloons to protect the Allied troops and ships. African American medics tend to the men wounded in the bloody battle. The 370th Infantry and the 598th Field Artillery, made combat ready with the best soldiers from the division, deploy to Italy. They join Allied forces fighting along the Gothic Line, stretching from north of Massa eastward to Bologna.
I felt that if I fought for my country, shed my blood if necessary, when I come back home, I would be treated as equal. I earned it.
In a sense, I really believe before two wars. One's a war against the Axis, the Germans and Japanese, and the other is a war against segregation.
African Americans would fight, bleed, and die in World War II to free people around the world. Their performance on the battlefield would change the American armed forces forever, and their bravery would pave the way for the modern civil rights movement that would emerge after the war.
On July 26, 1948, President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9981, mandating full integration in all branches of the U.S. military. By the time the Korean conflict ended in the following decade, this had largely been achieved. A A unanimous ruling of the United States Supreme Court in the case of Brown versus Board of Education declared that separate educational facilities for black and white children are inherently unequal.
Today's opinion makes a clear-cut determination that the Negro school children must be given their rights and given them, to use the court's language, as soon as practicable and on a non-discriminatory basis. By force of this language, counties and states holding up their desegregation program because of the continued existence of state laws requiring segregated schools are now free to act and to desegregate their schools in conformity to the May 17th decision. Thus, with this type of cooperation on the level of these states and counties throughout the South, we are confident that desegregation will proceed to open the door to true democracy for all of the children of our nation.
A decision of the Supreme Court has been made that segregation has no place in public schools.
I like the Supreme Court ruling on segregation because I think that we as Negroes can get a broader education and can advance farther than we have in the past.
In my opinion, Ms. Martin, I think that the decision handed down by the Supreme Court is one of the most wonderful things that happened in America, and especially in the South, in the last 50 years.
We still have many people in the South who have the opinion of separate but equal rights, separate but equal privileges. I think that probably that opinion is out of date. By that I mean that during the earlier history of our nation, we had aristocracy, we had a definite line of demarcation as far as the races were concerned. I think the Southerners have progressed to the extent now that we can approach this decision and this question as open-minded individuals, and I think we must do it that way, or else we will never solve the problem.
Some of the good people of both races who live under the protection of the United States may not be satisfied with the decision of the Supreme Court, but all of us know that the Supreme Court of the United States is the highest governing power that we have in the world.
After Rosa Parks was arrested on December 1st, 1955, for refusing to let a white passenger take her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus, African Americans began a prolonged boycott of the bus company by walking or carpooling for more than a year. On December 21st, 1956, black passengers once again rode Montgomery city lines.
For a number of years, the Negro passengers on the city bus lines of Montgomery have been humiliated, intimidated, and faced threats on this bus line. Just the other day, one of the fine citizens of our community, Mrs. Rosa Parks, was arrested because she refused to give up her seat for a white passenger. Mrs. Rosa Parks was arrested and taken down to jail, taken from the bus, just because she refused to give up her seat.
We have met with these people, the interracial conference, and a number of the colored leaders. We're glad to continue to meet with them. But their request was, in effect, that we operate without complying with the state and city laws requiring the separation of those races. That we cannot do because under our franchise from the city, we are required to abide by all applicable laws and ordinances.
At present, we are in the midst of a protest, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, representing some 44% of the population. This protest, I might say, did not come about merely because of the Rosa Parks situation. 90% at least of the regular Negro bus passengers are staying off the buses, and we plan to continue.
Where you going? Where you headed?
For more than 12 months now, we, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, have been engaged in a nonviolent protest against injustices and indignities experienced on city buses. We came to see that in the long run, it is more honorable to walk in dignity than ride in humiliation.
After the Supreme Court declared segregated schools unconstitutional in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, many public school systems were slow to adapt to the new legal reality. In 1957, 9 courageous students became the first African Americans to attend Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, where they endured violent harassment and received the protection of federal troops.
My name is Jefferson Thomas, and I'm one of the 9 from Little Rock. There is nothing strange in seeing 9 American children walking to school on a September morning. But this was a special morning in a special part of America, a place where Negro children had never gone to school with whites before. Hatred is easier to organize than understanding. And there was a minority in our state who found it to their advantage to bring hate to Little Rock in 1957. While we watched, the white children went to school, and we stood outside. We had been taught in school that we were a nation under law, and the law said segregation was wrong. Now we waited to see if our laws had meaning, or were just words in a book, or idle talk in a classroom. On September 27, 1957, President Eisenhower sent 1,000 men of the United States Army to carry out the law. The Supreme Court of the United States had said, "The entire strength of the nation may be used to enforce, in any part of the land, the security of all rights entrusted by the Constitution." And that included my rights and the rights of 8 other Negro Americans who wanted to go to Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. We were Terrence Roberts, Thelma Mothershed, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Carlotta Walls, Melba Patillo, Minnie Jean Brown, and Gloria Ray. And we were going to school again.